let's start a new file. File New. And in this file, start by pressing R to select your rectangle tool. In the upper left-hand corner of your screen, click once, move your mouse, and towards the bottom right, click again to draw a large rectangle. In this lesson, we'll learn about the navigation tools. There are 6 navigation tools on your large tool set here, but we're going to learn about 3 that you can access through your 3-button scroll wheel mouse. So you should have a 3-button scroll wheel mouse when you're using SketchUp. Don't try to use a trackpad. It's going to be way harder. And with your 3-button scroll wheel mouse, start first by rolling your mouse wheel forward or backward, and you'll be zooming to and from this rectangle. Now notice too that the zoom is smart. So what I mean by that, move your cursor over the top left-hand corner endpoint and roll your mouse forward towards that endpoint, or roll it backwards, and you'll be zooming to and from that point, versus if you move your cursor to the other side, to the other corner endpoint, and roll to and from that point, you'll notice that it's smart and zooming towards and away from that point. So rolling forwards and backwards will zoom in and out. Now try this. Press down on that center mouse wheel like a button, and your cursor will turn into an orbit cursor. Now you have to keep that held down as you move your mouse around, and you'll see that you're orbiting. Might be a little bit disorienting at first, but you're orbiting into 3D. You can go ahead and let go of that for a moment. Like I said in an earlier lesson, we're always in 3D space. So even though we're drawing in a top-down view where we see the green and red axes, think of it like you're drawing on the ground plane. But as soon as you orbit, as we've just done, you see this new blue axis. This is the vertical axis that's going up and down in 3D space. So it's like now we can see that we've always been in 3D space. We've just been drawing on the ground. Now, we'll talk more about the blue, red, and green axes in 3D space in just a moment. But first, let's go ahead and practice more of that orbit. So hold down your center mouse wheel, turns into the orbit tool. And if you try to orbit around, at first it can be a little disorienting. You can get to where your cursor also is sort of hitting the edge of your computer screen, and you can't seem to orbit quite where you want to go. So I'll let go of that again. You can let go of your mouse button. So what if you wanted to orbit all the way around this 360 degrees? Well, if you try to do that at first, you're not going to be very successful by just holding down and dragging as we were. So let me show you a trick, and this is something you'll use all the time, but it'll help you get way better at navigating right away. So move your cursor toward the bottom, not of the object, but the bottom of your drawing window. So it doesn't matter where your object is, just your drawing window. Put your cursor down somewhere near the bottom, in the middle. Hold down on the center mouse wheel so that you're in the orbit tool. And then move your mouse directly up, partway up the screen, and then let go. Okay, so you orbited a little bit so you can see from a more horizontal vantage point. Now just repeat that step again. So move your cursor somewhere down, hold down on that center mouse wheel, move the cursor up some amount, and let go. Now we've orbited almost underneath this rectangle. Repeat again and again. So hold down center mouse wheel, cursor up, let go, repeat again. And now we flipped our view. Notice we're not flipping the object over. We're actually rotating our view around the object. So we're underneath it now. So keep going again and again. And if you make lots of little orbits like this, you'll notice that eventually we've come all the way back around. So we rotated our camera, or orbited our camera, 360 degrees around this object. No problem. So we can't do that if we just hang on to an orbit and try to do it in one fell swoop. You eventually run out of screen real estate. But if you make lots of small orbits, it's not a problem at all. Now I'll orbit all the way back around till I get to where I have the solid blue pointing up and the green and red, the solid green and red axes pointing off to the side. Now challenge yourself to do the same thing, only go around horizontally, 360 degrees around horizontally. You can challenge yourself and pause the video and then see how I did it, or I'll show you right now if you want to follow along. So it's the same idea. Just put your cursor over to one side, hold down on that center mouse wheel like the orbit, and move your cursor towards the middle. Let go. Repeat the steps again, and again, and again, and eventually you've orbited yourself all the way around. So in this way, making small orbits, and for that matter, small zooms and other navigations, you're able to get anywhere you want your model quite quickly. And you'll notice that people who have been using SketchUp for a long time, it can be hard to watch them because they'll do so many subtle and small little navigations that it can look a little herky-jerky. But they've just internalized lots of little navigations as a very, very fast way to get where you need to go in your model. Now, the third tool that we can access, the third navigation tool through the mouse, is while holding down on your center mouse wheel. So go ahead and hold down on that center mouse wheel to turn in the orbit tool. Then on your keyboard, hold down the shift key. So you have to keep both keys held down, the shift key on your keyboard and the center mouse wheel button on your mouse. Your cursor turns into a hand icon, which is the pan tool. The pan tool allows you to pan your camera side to side, up or down. So again, you're not moving the object itself. Notice how it's staying fixed to the same point on the axes, the blue, red, and green axis. You're just panning your camera up, down. If you let go of the shift key, so go ahead and let go of the shift key, but you keep that center mouse wheel held down, now you're back in the orbit tool. And then when you let go of that center mouse wheel button, you're back in whatever tool you were in. In our case, it's the rectangle tool. So those three tools, rolling your mouse wheel forward and backward for zoom, holding it down for orbit, and then holding down that button, plus holding down the shift key, turns it into pan. Those three tools are all in your mouse and should always be accessed using your mouse. It'll help you model much, much more quickly in SketchUp. So I'll let go of the shift key and I'll let go of that center mouse wheel. Now that being said, those three tools are over here in your large tool set. So we see the orbit, the pan tool, and the zoom tool is just the regular magnifying glass here. You should never need to pick those tools over here in the large tool set. But there are a few navigation tools that you can only use by picking them over here or using their keyboard shortcut. Also, there's one small thing about the zoom tool that we'll cover that's a little bit different if you pick the tool here. So let's go ahead and cover how to use these other tools. First, I talked about the small difference in the zoom tool if you actually click on it. So go ahead and click on the zoom tool here, and you'll notice your cursor turns into the magnifying glass. Now with a normal mouse click, so a normal left mouse click anywhere on your screen, doesn't matter where, click and hold down and move your mouse either down or up, and you're zooming to and from the object. Now that being said, I'll let go of that mouse button. It's not smart, so it doesn't matter where you're at on your screen. If you click and hold down and drag from over here, or click and hold down and drag from over here, it's not smart like when you roll your mouse wheel. However, one thing it is good for is if you have a view like I have here, and you want to just zoom directly in towards the object. You don't want to accidentally zoom off a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, but you want to go directly in, almost like you would if you had a camera, whether it's a movie camera or some other type that's just zooming directly in, the lens. Then this can be helpful as a way to keep your camera, your virtual camera view, in the exact spot, but just zoom yourself to or from. So it's kind of like a real camera lens zoom if you use this. Okay, just to the right of the zoom tool is the zoom window tool. It's got a red dotted box around it. Go ahead and click on that tool. And here's how this tool works. Up towards the upper back right corner endpoint here, click and drag a window around that corner point and let go. And you dragged a window that you wanted to zoom into. So essentially the region that you wanted to jump straight into. So now we're zoomed in on that region. Now this might seem like a really great tool, especially if you've got a large model and you want to zero in on something, But I find that rolling your mouse wheel to and from that corner, or any other corner for that matter, is a much faster way to get in and out of what you need rather than picking that tool. Still helpful to know though, some people might like to use something like that to zero in on things. Now just beneath that tool is a tool called Previous. It's the View Previous tool. So click on that and you'll have jumped back one view. Click on it again and you'll jump backwards another view. Click on it again and you'll keep jumping backwards 5 views ago until you get to the 5th view ago, and then you click it again and you jump back to the first view in that sequence. So it's basically going to remember your last 5 views and then iterate through them and show you your last 5 views and then cycle back to the beginning again. So this tool is really helpful if you've taken the care to zoom really close into something, like say this corner, and then for some unknown reason you accidentally orbit yourself or something in a way that just gets you out of the view you wanted. Then you just click on View Previous and you'll be right back to where you were. Now, a quick word of warning. If you accidentally orbit or do something else to mess up your view, and you think to yourself, oh, I didn't mean to do that, you're going to think, I need to undo that. And if you think in terms of undo, you might accidentally think, I'll hit the undo arrow. But what happened here when I hit the undo arrow? I undid the last modeling step, which was creating the rectangle. So undo and redo arrows are not for navigation, undo and redo. You need to, if you followed along with me there and you undid that, go ahead and click on the redo. That puts that rectangle back. And instead, the undo of views is to click on View Previous. So remember, if you mess up something about navigation, View Previous is your friend, because if you undo, you will undo the last modeling step. Now the last of these navigation tools is the Zoom Extents tool. It's the magnifying glass with the arrows pointing in 3 different directions. So try this. No matter where your model is situated right now, that rectangle in your model, go ahead and find a white space area and roll your mouse wheel forward several times until you've zoomed off into white space. This happens from time to time. You're working on a model, you accidentally find yourself lost in space. You might try to orbit around, can't find where anything is. If you get into a situation like this where you've navigated yourself to a place that you need to just get out of, you need to get back to a safe place, click on Zoom Extents. It'll pop your camera view back so that you see the full extents of your SketchUp model. In this case, the full extents is the entire rectangle. Now, it won't necessarily jump you into the view you wanted. In this case, maybe I wanted to look a little more down at this. I would still have to orbit from here and figure out what view I wanted. But it's just helpful because sometimes in haste, you'll sort of be zooming towards something and then out of nowhere, you might zoom yourself all the way through. Or as you'll find later, you might have an object where you get stuck inside of it or somehow navigate into a strange place. Just click Zoom Extents and it'll get you back to a safe place. Now with all that being said, I want you to go ahead and orbit and pan and zoom as needed to get your rectangle into a view like what I have here on my screen, where you have the solid blue axis pointing up, the solid green axis pointing off to the right, and the solid red axis pointing off to the right. And you'll be all set for the next lesson.